Good morning, church family. This is March 13th, and we are looking at Deuteronomy chapter 5 through 7. And this is a continuing of Moses retelling the law to this new generation of Israel about to enter the promised land. In Deuteronomy 5, Moses retells the story to this young generation of how God gave the 10 Commandments to their parents. Their parents immediately responded that they will hear and do what God commanded. The Lord heard them and lamented, and he said, "Oh, that they had such a heart in them, that they would fear me and keep all my commandments always, that it may be well with them and with their sons forever." God gives commandments to protect and to provide for his people. We can miss his heart for us if we only look at how the commandments may put limits on our own desires. Remember, we are seeking to know him and what motivates him. He loves his people enough to tell them what is right and best, and that would be his commandments. Deuteronomy 6 is one of my favorite chapters. God explains why we are to obey him. He says in verse 2, "So that you and your son and your grandson may fear the Lord your God, to keep all his statutes and his commandments which I command you all the days of your life, and that your days may be prolonged." Now this fear, as we understand, is not a fearful dread of him necessarily, but an awe out of remembering who he is and what he's done for them. And because of that, we want to obey what he says. In verse 3, he says, "O Israel, you should listen and be careful to do it, that it may be well with you and that you may multiply greatly, just as the Lord, the God of your fathers, has promised you, in a land flowing with milk and honey." The next two verses are called the Shema by the Jewish people. It is the first part of a daily prayer that they say over the years. And Shema means listen, hear. And it's not just like we think of, okay, I heard that. It's hearing with an intentional heart that's ready to obey whatever is going to be said. So you've already prepared yourself. You've put yourself in that position of saying, "Yes, Lord," before you even know what it is. And here's the verses. It says, "Hear, O Israel, the Lord is our God. The Lord is one. You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your might. These words, which I am commanding you today, shall be on your heart. You shall teach them diligently to your sons, and shall talk of them when you sit in your house, and when you walk by the way, and when you lie down, and when you rise up." Knowing God is an ongoing conversation, an ongoing connection daily with him. And I had a beautiful mentor in that. I know some of you may have heard this already, but my granddad, when I was a little girl, grandmother would be fixing breakfast and I would see him come out of the bedroom. And the first thing he would say is, "Do you know what Jesus just told me?" And he'd been reading his word. But for me as a little girl, I was surprised and thinking, "You mean Jesus is real and he's even in your bedroom? You were talking with him?" That's the kind of relationship he set before me, and what I have desired to have and then to share with our kids and our family is that we would have this daily communion with him, regardless of what's going on in the day. And that's what God is calling them to with this Shema, with this "Hear, O Israel." God's command was to help them continue to be his people when they entered this new land, and to not be drawn into the ways of the people around them, but to remain intentionally set apart to him, holy to him. God also calls himself a jealous God. And this is where it is important to not lean on our own understanding of jealousy. God is jealous for his people to have his best, to not compromise, but to live wholly, completely in his blessing, completely devoted to him. It's a good jealousy because it is who he is. He so wants us, his people, to be completely his. Then Deuteronomy 7 is a great chapter to see all that God is doing for his people. He recounts these things that he has done. And if you have time, I'd encourage you to read through it again and make a list of everything that God has done and see how faithful he is because of his love for them. Deuteronomy 7 is a great encouragement for God's people even today. This is our God, And I'd like to close with what he says in chapter 7, verses 7 through 10. The Lord did not set his love on you, nor choose you because you were more in number than any of the peoples, for you were the fewest of all peoples. But because the Lord loved you and kept the oath which he swore to your forefathers, the Lord brought you out by a mighty hand and redeemed you from the house of slavery, from the hand of Pharaoh, king of Egypt. Know, therefore, that the Lord your God, he is God, the faithful God, who keeps his covenant and his loving kindness to 1,000th generation with those who love him and keep his commandments. But, here's a contrast, he repays those who hate him to their faces, to destroy them. He will not delay with him who hates him. He will repay him to his face. Sobering. May we know the Lord and listen to him and encourage others to know him or to know him more. May we hear with our heart already prepared to obey. May we obey our faithful, loving God who is the same yesterday, today, and forever. What spoke to you from these chapters today? I'd enjoy hearing from you in the comments. Thank you, and may you have a blessed day.